This will be part 5 of my Outlander Blood of My Blood Season 1 Episode 1 review titled Providence. As always, if you are looking to avoid spoilers from the books or the TV show, please do keep on scrolling. So we ended part 4 talking about Ellen leaving the castle, trying to avoid Malcolm Grant, and riding her horse out to the edge of the land to meet Brian. One thing I noticed is that there is a song playing over this scene when she is riding her horse out to the bridge, and I think that that is going to be in part Brian and Ellen's theme song, just like Claire and Jamie have one. And when this clip came out as promotional material, I did do a full breakdown of it, including breakdown of the dialogue and the conversation that these two have at the beginning of this scene. So go and watch that if you want to listen to my commentary on it. But the real meat and potatoes of the scene is when Brian and Ellen finally end up standing next to one another at the top of the bridge after they both promised that they would stay on their respective sides. After the two of them basically admit that it's really unfortunate that he's a Fraser and she's a Mackenzie, Ellen says to Brian that she's tried to forget him since they've met. And Brian comes back at her with this great line about how he's not stopped thinking about her since. He tells her that she's haunted his every thought. And one thought that I had was that there was a missed opportunity here to be inside the brain of Brian in the hours since he met her, because presumably he went back home. Like, we don't know what happened to him and where he went and what he did, because he wasn't with Myrta and he immediately came back the next day to meet her. So I would love to have some sort of POV of him thinking about her for 12, 24 hours, whatever it ends up being, and what he was thinking about. And I'm sure we'll get some sort of insight into that, but I wish they did include some scene where we saw where he went and what he was thinking. I also think with the dialogue that they give Brian in this scene, it sort of heavily implies that a lot of Jamie's wordsmithing and beautiful prose that he says to Claire probably come from this man right here. And his sort of quippiness and sarcasm come from his mother, because her response is that she didn't say that she succeeded in trying to forget Brian. So the two of them have a great banter back and forth with one another here, mirrored by the fact that they literally are like magnets and they just keep slowly walking towards each other. One thing I also really loved is that they set Brian up to be very much a gentleman, in direct contrast to his father, who is not at all. And so when he reaches out and touches Ellen's hands, he's immediately apologetic and offers to go back to his spot across the bridge. And that puts the onus sort of where this is going to go back in Ellen's hands, and she's the one that tells him no, it's okay, and keeps him there up on the top of the bridge with her. So we as viewers instantly get that they're both as into each other as the other one is right away. And I think for the modern woman in me, the fact that Ellen so quickly is wondering how they can be together when they've met one time felt a little far-fetched, but this is a story that was told by everyone in Jamie's life throughout his life as being one where the two of them were just instantly meant to be and madly in love with one another. And that is what they're trying to convey here, is that they both just knew inherently that this was their person and that they were going to try and figure out a way to build a life with one another come hell or high water. Ellen asks him, where do we go from here? And points out that there's going to be a lot of obstacles ahead for them, and I really don't think the two of them realize just how many are going to be ahead for them. There's a lot that this show is going to have to push them through. There's going to be a lot of difficulty for the two of them, and I think that they succeeded in kind of giving us a good idea of like what each of them brings to their relationship, whereas Ellen is feisty and has that really determined will about her, and Brian is smart but also emotionally intelligent, and they'll work well together. You can see that pretty obviously just from these short interactions we have from them, because we've very quickly gotten to know kind of who they are at their core already. And just like in the main series, there are certain lines that I feel like are very hard for an actor to say as spoken word without them feeling kind of corny. And to me, the line that Brian has about, like tempting the devil for one more moment with her, that's a hard line to say as though that's how he normally speaks. So it didn't land that well with me personally, but the sentiment is there. And again, this scene ends and it is daylight, and Ellen does not return back to Leoc until after dark. And we don't know what they were up to. So I hope we get some filler where we kind of figure out what they were doing. Now, all that time that Brian is away with Myrta's girl, Myrta is trying to win the hunt for Ellen. So this is going to be a disaster. And we get another Easter egg for the main series where we can see the boar tusks here that he wins at the hunt. There's a whole storyline about this in the books and the TV shows where Myrta tells Claire at the end of season 1 the story behind the tusks and how he makes them into bracelets and gifts them to Ellen as a wedding gift. So some excellent foreshadowing for that here by having them laid out on the table as Myrta is washing his hands and presumably waiting for an opportunity to give them to her on this exact day. And then you know that he carries them around all that time and ends up gifting them to her at her and Brian's wedding. While he is washing his hands, he is approached by Jocasta, who we saw earlier checked him out from across the way and is intrigued by Myrta, and he kind of lets it slip, not so subtly, that he's looking around for Ellen, and Jocasta once again lets it be known that she is jealous of her and feels like she is always second fiddle to her sister. A detail that I loved is this scene here where Jocasta is holding on to Myrta's hands, because in the show, this does not happen in the books, she remembers his hands when she loses her eyesight. And so I think these kind of subtle moments that they're adding from when they were younger just strengthen the scenes that they've included in the show when they are older and the two of them get together in America. You can also tell here that Myrta's comments about him never meeting a Mackenzie who dwelled in any shadow, like Jocasta feels that she is in Ellen's shadow, is something that would fuel her for years to come, and that his kindness is something that she clearly fell in love with pretty early on. Because you have to remember that Jocasta is actually very young in the books. She looks older in the show, and they probably aged her up a bit, but she's a very young bride, and she got married not for love, but for, strengthening the clan. And so this would be her first sort of soiree with romance, and Myrta showing her any sort of attentions would have gone a very long way for her. So I actually liked the addition of this scene and what it adds to the main series. When we go to the dinner later on, when the sun is going down and we realize that Ellen is not at dinner, this is the perfect opportunity, and they use it well, to highlight that this whole episode, Colm has been changing his tactics. He's been getting smarter. He's been getting more calculated. And him setting off Dougal to go and do something stupid is the perfect example of that. It's also evidence that we know that Dougal is extremely predictable. He always has been, he always will be, and Colm plays right into that, and Ned is just left standing on the sidelines watching these two men puppeteer the other, even though I would say Dougal isn't smart enough to puppeteer, so he's really kind of becoming a pawn in the greater game that Colm is playing. Truthfully, I think Ned would rather dip out altogether, but here he is, stuck with these men, and Colm is definitely leaning into the fact that he can leverage Ned's help and intelligence if he offers him a position as his advisor if he becomes Laird, which we know is what happens. When we see Dougal attach their caravan of people heading back towards the Grant lands, this is when we start to see a different side of Henry and how capable he is. And again, how oddly comfortable he seems back in 1714. One would suspect that he would try and lay low, keep a low profile, but here he is in the middle of everything, mixing it up with all these men. I, for one, find it very attractive, but that's just me. And doing what he does best, he is the one that sort of de-escalates the situation and lets Dougal know that he just made a very, very big mistake. One thing I love about this scene is that Malcolm Grant actually shows some mettle here and stands up for himself against Dougal, even though he is much smaller and weaker than him and just got his butt kicked. He does let him know that he is a powerful man and he is not afraid to wield that power. And personally, I thought the acting by Sam Redford here was incredible, because you can see the turmoil he has inside because he knows just how badly he messed up here, and he looks like a little boy. Ellen returns home far later than we last saw her at the bridge and walks into a whole slew of problems, and Dougal is all too quick to cast blame on her, and we can see how quickly him and Colm turn. Dougal can feel his control slipping through his fingers, and he lashes out at her. So we'll break down that conversation in part 6.